Hi, I'm Keith Cox with Seafood Analytics, and I'm the Chief Science Officer.
I'm Chuck Anderson, and I am the businessman, the fish guy, fishmonger when it comes to seafood analytics.
And the reason we're talking today is I had some questions about COVID, and so we're all experiencing COVID right now, and so how that is affecting seafood sales. And as the Chief Science guy, I don't really get into the retail market space or customer interactions with seafood products. I'm behind the scenes looking at data. And so my question to Chuck is like, how has COVID and everything associated with it, how has that affected, seafood sales, maybe both at the retail level and also at the restaurant level?
Okay, so for 2020, they just came out with the data, and a company called IRI, who does syndicated data, looking at the scan data coming out of grocery stores, said that supermarket seafood sales were up 26%, 2020 versus 2019. And that's primarily because of COVID-related stuff. And there's three things happening there. One has to do with restaurants. One has to do with people not working and being home and have time to do things. And then three, I think it has to do with some government benefits, and that's had an effect on what's going on. So the restaurant side, so restaurants just came to a screeching halt come March of 2020, right? And about two-thirds of every dollar spent on seafood in the United States is spent at restaurants. So all of a sudden, all that restaurant business, people who want to eat seafood can't go to restaurants and eat seafood. So the food service side, the restaurants came to a crashing halt. So that's a big chunk of what happened with seafood, is people started buying more seafood, at home and trying it at home because they couldn't get it at the restaurant.
Oh, so they were relying on the restaurants to cook their seafood for them.
There's a lot of folks that just didn't grow up cooking seafood themselves. There's, it's an expensive product. First time you go home and you mess up a $20 a pound halibut, and you stink up the house or you overcook it. Man, you don't want to do that again. You're going to go to Red Lobster. You're going to go out to a nice seafood restaurant, and that's why, again, 2/3 of seafood dollars are spent at the restaurant. Pre-COVID. And that's not true for chicken and pork. I mean, people know what to do with chicken. Generally, they don't screw it up at home. They know what to do with beef and pork and things like that. So, the majority of the dollars, of spent on pork are spent at home. The majority of the dollars, spent on chicken are bought at the grocery store, not in restaurants.
So the restaurants were in a way, so people are cooking more at home and experimenting more at home.
Right.
And what was the second thing there that you had?
Well, yeah. So two, I think people have time. So instead of people being rushed, two people were working, they got to get home, they don't have time to cook dinner. So you're kind of afraid to try to cook seafood on a whim like that. Plus you want to buy it fresh that day, cook it that night. Well, now they can. They can order it, pick it up at the store, or get it delivered. And then they have time to look up the recipes online. How do I cook this? Watch a video on how to cook it. So a lot of people, I think, plus they got bored. You're at home cooking the same thing over and over. You don't want to keep making the same mac and cheese and hamburger helper or whatever you make. You want to try something new. So it's like, well, let's try seafood.
And you may have remembered that mahi was really good at some restaurants. So I'm going to try and figure out how to cook mahi.
Exactly. Yeah. So people had time. They Googled it. They went on the Food Channel. They watched the shows, and they started experimenting. So people learned how to cook fish at home, which they were really afraid to do in a lot of cases before. So one, the restaurants were closed. Two, they wanted to experiment. A third factor, which I didn't mention, was a lot of the beef and pork processing plants had issues with COVID. And they had to, scale back or shut down because they were getting these outbreaks. And the seafood industry was able to kind of avoid that. So one, there were shortages of beef. People, one, were hoarding, beef products. Two, some of the processing plants were behind. So you had empty holes on the shelves in the grocery stores. Or if you tried to order online, you just couldn't get those beef products. And then what happened then, so some people switched to seafood for that reason. Then what happened, then inflation hit. If there's supply and demand, there's too much supply, their prices go down. But in this case, there was too much demand. Wasn't enough beef, too little supply, too much demand. The price of filet mignons went from $12.99 for a filet mignon steak to like $20 a pound or $25 a pound. So some people said, hey, if instead of spending $15 a pound on a porterhouse steak, I can just go buy snow crab, for $15 a pound.
So the restaurants kind of spiked in interest, then the restaurants went away. So then the people had time, which was the second one. So then they could experiment with it. And then the third, there was COVID related issues within, a lot of the other protein processing plants. And then you had another one that was like government subsidies or something like that.
This is the one that most people don't realize. So one of the first things they did in March and April of 2020, because they were concerned about, one, kids not getting, food at school, and two, the economy was weak and they wanted to make sure people who, lost their jobs, a lot of folks lost their jobs. They wanted to give them money to make sure they had food on the table. So there's a program called SNAP, or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And that's a government, it used to be called food stamps, but now it's like a EBT card or a debit card, which folks, that under a certain income level get these benefits. Well, one of the first things they did is they increased those benefits by 40%.
Yeah, so people could afford more seafood.
Right. So immediately what they did was the government passed it and said everybody's going to go right up to the maximum. So if you're a family of four, you got $600 instead of $400. If you're a family of five, you now got $768 versus $528. So you've got an extra $200 a month that you can spend on. And you got to think, like, so you've bought the milk, you've bought the bread, you've bought the canned goods, whatever you could buy, and you still got money left over. So it's like, well, if I'm going to have extra money, I don't need any more tuna, pouches. I don't need any more bread or milk. Let me see what kind of beef they have. So the high-end beef cuts were selling better, but you'll see the spikes. So seafood is up 26%, but like the crab category was up 62%. People were splurging. They're like, hey, I got, and you got to spend it on food.
But it's a stimulus package would do the same thing. And so you might have this extra stimulus package money. And then you're like, well, I remember having this good experience with king crab, and now I have this extra $600,000. I'm going to buy some king crab. So those are four good reasons why seafood sales could be increased. And so are increasing.
I think now the issue is, if you're a retailer, how do you maintain those sales? Did you do a really good job, taking care of those customers and satisfying their needs, so that now when the restaurants come back, do you lose all that business, or are you able to maintain maybe a 10 or 15% increase? Because now people are comfortable cooking at home. You can try, marketing and advertising new products. And it's good for people. So hopefully what happens is the restaurants go back to full employment, they get full sales, and people are also eating fish just more. They're going to cook more at home.
Because they're used to cooking it themselves at home.
Right. So instead of eating fish once a week or once a quarter or once a month out of the restaurant, maybe they're still eating once a week or once a month at the restaurant, but now they're augmenting that with one or two meals a week they're cooking at home. So that'll be good for everybody's health. It's going to be good for the seafood supply chain, and obviously great for seafood retailers and restaurants.
Yeah, all along the seafood supply chain. Fishermen are selling their fish, the processors are selling their fish, and it trickles all the way down. So our company manufactures a handheld device that measures seafood quality. And so with the increase in seafood sales, at the retail level, how could our device that measures seafood quality, how could that help or bolster seafood sales into the future as we're looking forward?
Well, as the volumes increase, and people are always concerned about quality, they can use the certified quality reader at their warehouse or distribution center for the grocery stores, and they can also use it in the grocery store itself. So you can provide the CQR to the seafood manager, and he can check that product before he puts it on display each morning. Is this product good enough to be on display? Maybe it's still okay, but I have to make it a value-added product. So this salmon is going to become bourbon salmon. But you can help track the quality of your product coming in. Make sure your suppliers are doing the best job they can to give you good quality. And I think that's one way you're going to maintain sales long term, is by making sure that every single time that customer buys seafood from your store, they're satisfied every time.
So by monitoring quality throughout the supply chain, you're ensuring, a better, more consistent, higher quality product at the consumer level where it matters.
Yeah, and I think the word consistent is really important there. So you think about chicken, which everybody's comfortable buying chicken at the grocery store. And people go to a grocery store and they buy chicken 20 times in a row. They're pretty much assured they're going to have 20 good meals in a row. But if you're buying fresh seafood from a grocery store 20 times, will you get 20 good meals in a row? And so I think that's one of the issues that has hurt seafood sales in the past at retail is people have had quality issues. So by using the CQR and improving practices, I think people can have better, more consistent quality. And that's how we're going to maintain those sales long term and increase seafood consumption, which is great for everybody.
And I would think that if the consumer knew that all the people upstream from buying that product were trying their very best to monitor quality, that would improve that consumer trust in what they're buying. You know, is that a true statement?
And I like the way you did the upstream thing. That kind of fits the whole seafood thing. But if people knew that not only they're using something like a certified quality reader at the store, but they're using it at the warehouse, they're using it at the processing plant, they use it on the boat, and that's where ultimately we're going to go. Is people are going to use this kind of technology on the whole supply chain to make sure that handling is perfect all the way down the line.
That's cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Chuck, and for answering my questions about COVID and seafood. And we'll have another
if anybody else has questions, you're more than welcome to go on our website or send an email to info@seafoodanalytics.com, and we will do our best to answer your questions online. Talk to you guys later.
Good day.